Ladies and gentlemen, today's show is going to be postponed because my internet is out. In fact, it's out in the neighborhood, and right now I'm streaming to you from my phone, and I have significantly cut the bit rate just to be able to communicate with you. I've cut the bit rate in half. So I don't know what the audio and video quality are like. However, I won't be able to do the show this way because the bandwidth available on my phone is extremely limited, and we've always had an issue with connection quality where the connection will buffer and stutter and skip. So I'm not going to try and do the show this way, but I had no, everything was ready to go on time except for the internet connection. And then I have an appointment today that can't be moved or adjusted. It's a hard set. So what I'll probably do is do the show later tonight, maybe in another 5 hours, 6 hours, everything should be back up and running. Thank you for all the contributions and all of your support and understanding of the situation. I'm certainly not happy about it. The system we're going to build today, I have the ability to do a few more of these. If you're interested in doing an 8-year build with the components like you see here, I have these boards and these coolers and these chips and the Corsair 200R cases and even these power supplies. I have enough to build a few. If you're interested in that, do reach out to me and see if we can help each other out. Maybe you need a computer, I need to get rid of some parts. Understand it'll be a couple of weeks. You have to be within the United States. This system is for a gentleman named Edgar. Edgar is a real estate agent, and I also have to get back to Marvin's computer that we did last night. We did the teardown of his old machine. I asked people for recommendations on that. A lot of people seem to be thinking the 12th gen is good. It isn't. 12th gen is not ideal for gaming. It's good for content creation. And a lot of people they don't realize it, but they want to put Marvin right back in the same situation by overselling him things he doesn't need to have, like a Z series motherboard, for example, or a high-end 12th gen chip, which is just gonna be wasted. He doesn't need that. That 3900X processor that was in his original build is like a 12-core, 24-thread processor. That's not beneficial to gaming. There's no gaming advantage to that. So if you guys have seen John Yasuda in the chat room, I don't think he's in there now. John had sent me a system for repair. He sent two. One was an X99 system, one was an X299 system. Way overkill for his needs. They were just rife with problems. The X99 had been replaced or repaired at least once or twice before. Then the X299 system then needed a repair because he was done with the X99, right? And then he bought the X299. And I did a whole video series on this about 2 years ago, explaining why more isn't better unless you need it. More adds to the complexity and the likelihood of increased maintenance and troubleshooting, because when you go that high up, you're not only paying for it with your wallet, you're paying for it in just the amount of time you have to invest to keep it running. So don't take my word for it. When the next time you see John Yasuda in the chat room, I talked John into just abandoning those X99s and X299s because they were not appropriate for his needs. Putting a 12th gen CPU in for Marvin is pointless because the 12th gen, it doesn't do very good in gaming compared to an 11th gen. But if Marvin was doing something involving content creation, that'd be a different story. So my plan, I've been thinking about it, for Marvin is going to stick with my original plan. I haven't heard anything better from the chat room. I want to thank John, Jack Wilson, Peter Laycock, and Ricky B for their contributions to this project. I think where Marvin's going to really benefit is to have more storage, because these games, you download the games from Steam, and as we all know, these games are huge. So we're probably going to put a 4 terabyte NVMe that's like $600 and then we will combine that with 64 gigs of RAM, and we'll use 2 sticks of RAM, not 4, because that just adds heat and power consumption. And an 11600K, I think, is the best gaming chip right now if what you're doing is playing games. We're not going to go to a Z-series motherboard. We don't want all the bells, whistles, and features. That's what got him into this situation. That's what got John Yasuda into the situation repeatedly. With John, we put in just a regular Core i7 or Core i9 processor, and John has been using that system every single day. He had one minor problem with a BIOS update that increased the voltages on the CPU, unbeknownst to him, and suddenly the computer started running hot when it never ran hot before. So John called me, we talked about it. John was a computer technician, and he was able then to follow my advice and adjust those voltages in the BIOS correctly. I wasn't quite sure what they were supposed to be for his chip, but he figured it out. He's a smart guy. And it's been trouble-free ever since. So I want you guys to understand that more is not always better. In some cases, it's just self-punishment. So when I see messages that say, Marvin deserves a Z-series board, it's like me saying you deserve a punch in the face. You know what I mean? That's nothing somebody deserves. It's all about matching the hardware to the needs of the individual. And I think Marvin got swept up on these high-end builds. Marvin's got an X99 here. Marvin's 3900X is just not a gaming chip, nor is the X99 series of chips. They were never intended for gaming. They were intended to create the games. And while yes, they can do gaming, a school bus that's empty 90% of the time seems pointless. Or in this case, it would be 100% of the time. Or to just say you have 2 kids and you want to take them back and forth to school. So you buy a school bus for that? That's crazy. It's like saying I want the biggest vehicle I can buy. That is rarely a smart decision unless you actually have a purpose for a large vehicle. So to have it and then not use it, or not to use it to its capacity, is a complete waste of money. So we see this time and time again from people where they look at specs, they look at reviews, they watch enthusiast content creators looking at benchmarks. But what they don't know is living with it day to day. And everybody uses their computer differently. So for example, the system that I'm going to build later on today, I keep looking over at the cable modem. The light is still, I got 1 blinking light. I should have like 4 solid lights, and it's still down. This system, I had a previous generation. This is an i5, and I have an i7 10th generation, which is faster and more expensive than this. But it turns out, I told Edgar, I said, take a look at these two. You can just type in 11600K versus 10900K. I can't remember what this, anyway, you just type it in and CPU user benchmarks comes up, and it'll show you the comparison. And so he looked at that and he studied it because he knows how he's going to use the computer. And he said, it seems after looking at the charts, this is an email I got from Edgar because I wanted him to choose if he wanted the newer, lower numbered chip or the older, higher chip. And he said, for 90% of my usage, looking at the specifications and performance between the 2 chips, for 90% of the time, he says, the cheaper, newer chip would be faster for him than the previous generations. We're talking an i5 versus an i7. The previous generation's i7. And so in this case, you know, some consumers or some customers, when you talk to them, they're like, I don't know any of this stuff, that's why I'm calling you. But I always offer my customers the opportunity to decide for themselves, to make them, help them to understand what it is they're buying, and they know their needs better than I do. And then, you know, if I have a comparison of 2 different chips, I just do the search for them, and I email them the link, and all they have to do is click on the link, and the left side is one CPU and the right side is another. You can try this right now. You can go to Google and type in 11600K space versus or VS space, and then any other chip you want, like this AMD 3900X. And you don't have to type the manufacturer, just 3900X. And then a website comes up and it'll say, it's something like userbenchmarks.com or something. But what I like about it is it shows you productivity in different applications. It shows you gaming with different games and frames per second. And in some cases, one chip is better than the other chip, regardless of its price, or regardless of the number of cores, depending on the way it's being used. So anyway, I want you guys to understand that always going for a Z-Series board is a complete waste of money if you have no reason to use a Z-Series board. Just saying you have it, to me, it isn't worth the trouble of the ongoing complexity that's there with a Z-Series board, unless it's justifiable. Now, that's not to say I wouldn't do it. If the customer says, I don't care if I need it, I just want it, that's a different story, and I'm happy to build whatever the customer wants. But all too often in the chat and in comments, I see people just automatically going for the most expensive, latest chip as though that's beneficial. Remember, I said Marvin likes to play older games, and those older games are gonna, he's gonna struggle getting those older games to run. And on a 12th gen, like a 12900K, any 12th gen, honestly, isn't going to do as well than an 11th gen when it comes to playing games. Generally, there may be some games that perform better, but overall, statistically speaking, and you can research this yourself, the 11600K is the way to go. The 12400, which was recommended, I did a little research. That's a 2 gigahertz processor. Now, it does crank up to 5, but that's ridiculous. And then you've got those performance cores and E cores, which are really more beneficial in Windows 11. So if you want to play old games, some old games, not just old games, but some, and you've got Windows 11, good luck getting them to run. You're gonna just adding more and more complexity. If you're going to get a Z-Series motherboard, but you don't have any reason to utilize any of the features of the Z-Series board, then it's just wasting your money. And that's ultimately what got Marvin into this situation, was just building some big, monstrous diva of a computer that's constant, never-ending maintenance. This is what John Yasuda did, and then John replaced it with another one. And then he replaced it with another one. And then I said, what are you doing with it? This is a machine used in content creation. What are you doing with it? And there's this mindset that I have to have the best. But Ferraris aren't known for their reliability. Ferraris aren't known for their affordability. So you want to buy a Ferrari, but you want to drive it like a Toyota. Just buy the Toyota. You'll save money. You'll have a more reliable car. You worry too much about what other people think. If you're buying a Ferrari because you see it as an investment that you later want to resell to make a profit, it's entirely a different story. But that's not what we're doing here today. I have 3 different systems just for Marvin. We've got the one we broke down. We've got the X99 system he gave me. And we've got the new system we're going to build for him. And then when we're done with that, he's got a laptop he wants upgraded. So we're going to take care of him, and I hope that the information helps you to understand why it's so important to listen to the customer's needs. And if you're really a skillful technician, if you're really good, then you'll understand that just always aiming at the best is something an enthusiast does. It's not something a professional does. There has to be a practical and pragmatic reason to tolerate those expenses and the complexity of those builds. And since none of you are supporting it, I'm the one supporting it, and none of you have talked to Marvin, I have talked to Marvin. What we're looking, when I ask for suggestions, I'm hoping your suggestions will keep that in mind, that what got Marvin into the situation was this over-the-top stuff that he won't use 10% of it. He won't do it. So I'm not going to lead Marvin right back to where he was. I'm not going to run him in a circle. And at the end of the day, it's Marvin's happiness is of paramount importance to me. And so when we build Marvin's system and we deliver it to him, we'll find out if he's happy with it. And that's the most important thing. If he says it doesn't have enough power, then we'll upgrade his CPU. You know, it's not like a one and done. He's local, so I can just go back and forth. He's 20 minutes away from me. So I would rather build what I believe is going to be beneficial based on what he has shared with me than to just start picking everything that's at the top of the list because he deserves it. I don't think he deserves that. It's just like, hey, you deserve this negative thing. It looks really good. It's boastable to brag. Marvin's not interested in bragging. He's well beyond that. But he would like to get back to gaming. So the 12th generation, if the main reason that he wants to use the computer is for first-person shooters, it's mostly going to be on storage space, RAM. You know, you definitely want 32 gigs. For him, we're going to put 64 gigs. And the CPU doesn't really come into it very much, and especially when we want to play the older games. So yeah, the GPU is going to play a bigger role in that. And with the 2080 Ti, that'll be more than sufficient for his gaming needs. With regards to the other parts, with regards to the 2080 Ti, with regards to anybody saying that I'm doing a disservice to Marvin, those people don't listen. Marvin has no way to get rid of the parts. He has no interest in continuing to store them, and he doesn't have the means or the ability to just put them up on eBay and sell them, or he would have done that, or even to put an ad in Craigslist. He doesn't want to do that. Instead, what he wants me to do is to distribute his parts to other veterans and other people in need. I'm not taking his other 2080 Ti video card. I don't know where you got that idea. I said that we would take it in exchange, but then what am I going to do with it? You guys know I'm not a gamer. I don't have time for it. So that'll end up becoming you know what? I already explained this in the last video, but there were a handful of comments for people that were particularly nasty, which I have removed and banned those people because all they're doing is exposing their ignorance and misunderstanding of other people's needs beyond their own and making assumptions without asking questions for clarification. And it's very disparaging sometimes to be excited for something and to want to help somebody, and then to have somebody you don't even know them, you've never conducted any business with them, you've never done anything or said anything about them or to them, and yet they come out attacking. So once again, the ban button is back in effect for those people. They're not welcome here. I don't know why somebody would voluntarily watch a video they don't like. Please don't watch it. Go watch another video. It doesn't entitle you to attacking the content creator over any circumstance. It's just it's a low-life loser thing to do. However, most of the comments were very positive. There were some good ideas as well. The idea of maybe taking the other motherboard that Marvin, the one we took out, and maybe offering to put that in a system for him to give to his grandkids, since that's what he was building machines for his grandkids, and I don't know if they just don't need computers anymore, but it was a great point, and it would be a wonderful gesture to just turn around and rebuild that again, those spare parts into another machine that perhaps somebody in his family could use. Madi Yoel contributes $2. Hey, thank you, Madi, and it looks like I missed a few others. Let me give you guys a few shouts out here. John McNally with 10 Canadian dollars. Hey, thank you, John. And Navy Retired with $5 says, Carrie lives in the real world. Yeah, I kind of feel alone. Kenton Morton contributes $4.99. He says a 10700K, 32 gig of RAM is a perfect build. I built 2 of them for my kids and it's been flawless. It's a good chip. I did like the 10700K until I played with the 11900K. The only downside on the 11900K, at least with the Scythe Mugen 5, is when it actually starts, like if I'm decompressing a zip file or something like that, or rendering a video, whew, that fan cranks up. You know when that 11900K is working. And I was thinking, you know, I really like the 11900K. Built one for Madi, I built one for myself. You saw Mitch was looking at it like, hey, I want one of those. And I'm on the fence about doing that for Marvin. I really feel it's overkill for gaming, and it is going to add some noise. However, even that noise will be less than what he was dealing with. And of course, the video cards themselves, when they're pushed, are going to get quite loud, and there's nothing I can do about that. So right now I'm on the fence about which processor. Remember, more is not always better. In the case of an 11600K versus an 11900K, really not a big difference other than the price, the noise, and the power consumption, or potential power consumption. I think Marvin would benefit from bigger storage. Keep the 64 gigs of RAM. He definitely needs 60. He doesn't need it, but we're going to give him 64 gigs. So in other words, we don't want to just check off every box. That's what the big beast build was all about, right? It was getting the best of everything on both the Mini ITX board and the eATX board that went into it. And it didn't get the highest end processor, but it was just a couple steps down from the highest end. And you saw how much trouble that was getting that all up and running. In fact, Doug's had it now all week, and he is just now getting everything configured to, you know, he got his image transferred. He's got it booting. You know, we're dealing with going from MBR to GPT. We're talking about his Windows 10 Home needs to go to Windows 10 Pro because of his clone. And we're talking about another conversion factor because we're moving forward not only 10 years in technology, but also we're moving forward in the whole technology, chipsets, all of that. That wasn't an easy clone to do. One might argue it would have been faster and easier to just install, to take it the way I had it, which was with a clean install of Windows 10 and then to put his stuff back on. But it was his choice. He wanted to pursue this other way. It's certainly not the way I would have recommended, but he's also not an average ordinary customer, is he? He knows what he's doing. He knows that these are the puzzles that he's been paid to solve for his career in IT. The only difference was he was doing it for himself and he was making an informed decision. And you know, I wouldn't have done it that way, but it's not mine to decide that. And you know, he's also got the Mini ITX build, so everything you configure on the one system, the next system you have still needs to be done. So these big expensive computers, they require a lot of maintenance, they require a lot more work than a regular computer. And I spent 4 hours cable managing that. I wouldn't spend 4 hours cable managing a computer. But it just adds to the cost, it adds to the complexity, and it adds to the amount of labor involved, not only to build it and get it running and configured, but also just to keep it running. Now, ideally, there won't be any issues because Doug is a tech, right? So any issues he would come across, he's got the experience to deal with it. But hopefully we'll see it in use over on Doug's channel soon. Alex contributes $19.99. Hey, Alex, thank you so much. Tom K with a $1 contribution. Are you guys noticing the degradation of quality by me cutting the bitrate in half so I can broadcast from my phone? I'm not going to start this build off of my phone. I keep looking over at the cable modem. The internet is still out. The reason I don't want to start this is when the signal quality is going to drop. If you guys remember when I was first here in Studio B, I had a lot of internet connection problems and started using the phone, and it was painful. We'd get stuttering, it'd be beautiful for about half an hour, and then suddenly it just wouldn't want to connect anymore. So I'm really pressing my luck by keeping this stream on this long. But essentially, I need you to understand that with the internet being down, I have two choices. One is I can just hit the record button, go offline, hit the record button, and build it as though I were live, and then air it later. But then I miss out on the interaction with you guys. Two, I could scrub the project altogether and just build the whole thing offline so that Edgar doesn't have to wait longer. Three, we just postpone by a few hours with the idea that the internet, when it goes out here, usually only goes out for about an hour. I've never really seen it out for more than 2, and it's very infrequent. About an hour before the show was getting ready to start, or before the show was scheduled to start, the internet was fine. And then all of a sudden, as I'm prepping everything and turning the cameras and lights on, I turn on the computer, it says no internet. So initially I think, well, I must be rushing, let it sit a minute, And then I just happen to glance over at the cable modem and I see the one blinking light and all the other lights are out. And that tells me all I need to know. Other than, is it my cable modem? But I did talk to, the neighbor, and it's out over at the neighbors as well. So it's the whole neighborhood. Jim says, split the difference and do an 11-700K. It's funny you'd say that. When I was researching the parts last night and I was looking at Amazon and I was looking at processor prices, and given the contributions that came in, very generous contributions from Jack Wilson, from Peter Laycock, and from Ricky B, that's exactly what I thought. I thought split the difference, put an 11-700K in it with the Mugen 5. So yesterday on Amazon, I ordered one 11-700K. I think they're $350. I like the way you think. The issue, of course, with waiting for the internet to come up, if it's down all night, means that Edgar, his build gets postponed. If Edgar's gets postponed, that means Jeff's gets postponed. If Jeff's gets postponed, it means Marvin's gets postponed. You can see how it has a domino effect and everything starts to pile up. Right now, I can barely walk through Studio B, so there's going to be time for a change in my process, where I'm just really going to have to hunker down to get caught up. Barry Klein with $5 said, here's a small contribution to help offset the extra bandwidth on the phone. Well, right now, the bandwidth I'm using isn't costing me anything yet. I can get, I think, 10 gigs of data for $75. It's essentially, I'm going to use about 2 gigs of data per hour, a little bit more. And as you can imagine, if I do a 4 or 5 hour live stream, when you run out of bandwidth on a phone data plan, it doesn't disconnect you, it just significantly throttles your speed down, which would make it impossible to do a video. So I'm just using my regular monthly data right now, and I just want to keep you guys in the loop. I appreciate that everybody was here and looking forward to the show, but there are circumstances beyond my control. I do hope that this is just a normal outage, that they'll have Cox Communications will have the service back up and running by the time I get done with my appointment. I should turn that around so you can see the name there. Oh, I guess it has that on the back. But I also want to address what I'm sure some of you are going to complain about is in the parts list, a lot of the parts are unavailable, like the case. Or the parts are a lot more money. They're like, how did he get this together for $765 or whatever it was? This crucial ballistics RAM was $90 on sale for 32 gigs, 2 sticks of 16 each. It's $140 today. So this was on, and Crucial is getting out of the RAM business. This ballistics line, say goodbye to it. So you might see a lot of it on sale as they clearance it out. The Mugen 5s are in stock. The Edgar wants a 1 terabyte, not a 2 terabyte solid state drive. But the 2 terabyte is still on sale at Amazon. The 2 terabyte Samsung 970 EVO Plus for $199. These power supplies were $25 a piece when I bought them. Today they're about $50 a piece. So what I do, because I'm a system builder, is I monitor the sales. I get Newegg's email blast every day. I have an alert that comes in from slickdeals.net under certain product categories. And if I see a good price on something, I jump on it. That's how we're able to get the Corsair 200Rs. Those were not available on Amazon or Newegg. A viewer alerted me that they were back in stock at Corsair. I alerted you guys, and then I ordered as many as I could get and I could store because I knew they'd go out of stock again. But it's always a gamble, right? I don't know tomorrow if RAM prices are going to drop, and this same RAM kit could sell for $60 and I overpaid. I don't know if the price of solid state drives is just going to fall tomorrow or go up. I don't know when the Scythe Mugen coolers go back out of stock again. When the last time they went out of stock, they stayed out of stock for about 2.5 months. I don't know about chip shortages or whether or not the chip's going to go on sale. So when I already have a general idea of how much things cost. And if I see a good deal, but I don't need the part, I go ahead and order it. I may even order the limit. In some cases, they limit you to 2 or 3 per person, just so I don't have to worry about it. And then when I go to make the video and I say, okay, all of this can be had for $765, you guys are scratching your heads. You're like, how did he get it for, first of all, the case isn't even in stock. Correct. It's absolutely correct. That case has not been in stock at Amazon for over a year. However, Corsair, the manufacturer, has had it in stock off and on throughout the year. You have to watch for those specials. So, in any event, that's how the price came together. When the Corsair RAM was at $90 for 32 gigs, I bought the limit, which was 3, and I'm passing that savings on to the people who buy computers from me. However, I will tell you right now that the process of buying and storing and investing in these parts is risky because customers, like let's say this was a good deal at $90, but then all of a sudden it's $60. Let's just say that happens. Somebody's blowing them out and they're on sale. Customer says, why are you charging me $90 for a $60 part? And I'm like, hey, I'm just charging what I paid. So in most cases, that's my goal. But what ends up happening is it can backfire on me if the part goes down and I'm forced to then have to take a loss on it to please the customer. So in this case, the fact that I was able to get the 200Rs, the fact that I was able to get the RAM, means that when the next customer was ready, I had those to offer. But after the end of this year, I won't be doing that anymore. It's going to go back to the old-fashioned way that I was doing it, which is people will order their parts at whatever price they pay, and they will ship those parts to me for a build, and I will be doing maybe 1 build a month in 2023, maybe less. So the channel has to keep shifting and pivoting based on what the viewers are watching. And the builds, the viewership has been down on builds for a while now. And I'm kind of burned out doing them, if I'm honest. It's not very challenging for me. Perhaps the most challenging part would be the cable management on some of these, which I hate. I don't like doing cable management. I like how a machine looks when it's been cable managed. But that's why I bring Photo Ray in. And so I will bring Photo Ray back in very soon to help me get caught up with a lot of machines. If you're in the market for a computer that you want me to build, or you want something I already have built, please send me an email and let me know what your main purpose, what the computer's main purpose will be, if it's gaming or if it's email or browsing or whatever it is. Maybe you're a day trader. Let me know give me a budget of where you want to be, and then I can tell you whether or not I can work within that budget. You have to be within the United States. If you've ever ordered anything outside of the United States and then had it arrive in your country, then you already know why I won't do it. Not to mention the likelihood for any damage in that kind of shipping and my inability to help you because you'll be too far away. What am I going to do? I don't have a screwdriver long enough to help somebody in Europe or in Australia. I did ship the one computer to Australia. It was actually to Tasmania. That computer was an NZXT, the Nuka-Cola case, right? So not much bigger than the case here. $1,400 is what it cost to ship. And when it arrived, there was $425 in import fees that Australia government required to release the package. And there was no way for me to know that. Even the shipper couldn't tell me. They say there's going to be an import fee, but we don't know what it is. It varies depending on the type of product and the country it's going to. So more often than not, it's cheaper, far cheaper, and far more secure for you to buy within your own country for the sake of warranty. And, of course, as I mentioned, price. My phone is going crazy today. Internet stopped blinking. We might be back on with the internet here. If so, because I'm about ready to wrap this up. Let's see if we are reconnected here. We'll give everybody a minute. Looks like we are back online. I just removed the Wi-Fi antenna I was using when I had my phone on tether. And there you have it. I think we're back online. So hopefully you guys can see me and hear me. Although my bit rate is still cut in half, so we may not have the typical quality, video and audio quality you're accustomed to. Let me know if you see the difference at this reduced quality. If you guys are seeing low-res video, refresh the screen. Refresh your screen. I don't know that I can change the bit rate in OBS manually without stopping the stream or for the bit rate to take effect unless I stop and restart the stream, so bear with me for a second here. Okay, that bumps theoretically that bumps my bit rate back up. I just bumped it up to what it's supposed to be, what I normally have it at. All right, everybody, we're officially starting the video now. This build is for a gentleman named Edgar. He's a real estate agent, and he wants a machine that's going to be quiet, no RGB, no glass panels. The man wants to sell houses, and in doing so, he needs a machine that's going to be reliable and fast enough for him so that it doesn't interfere in potential sale. Home commissions, about 3%. For the selling agent and 3% for the buying agent. And as homes are a hot market right now across the United States, it's critical that you have the right tools to perform your job. So we're not building a gaming machine. We're not building a machine that's there as a showpiece. It's there to do work and to do it for as many years as possible. Hey, Peter Lightcock says the quality looks good there in Scotland. Thank you, Peter. Thanks for letting me know. And thank you all for feedback on the video and audio quality. For those just joining us, we had the internet was down here, and I was tethering off of my cell phone just to let you guys know what was going on. Let me make sure I turn my tethering off because I don't want, mobile hotspot is off. Okay. All right, well, I guess I can get started. I'm going to start moving some stuff aside. This is our Black Edition Mugen 5. This is our 1 terabyte Samsung 970 EVO Plus. This is 32 gigs, crucial. DDR3 3200, is it? Yeah, DDR4 3200. And the CPU is an 11600K. This runs at a stock 3.9 gigahertz with 12 meg of cache. And it scales up to, I think, 4.9, if I'm not mistaken. Can't remember. Yeah, it goes up to 4.9. So, I think this is going to be a great, reliable, quiet, solid 8-year build. You could turn it into a gaming PC if you were to put a more powerful power supply in it, and you could afford a graphics card. But it's of no interest to most people in business, although it depends what the business is. So thanks you guys for being patient as we waited for the connection to come back up. These motherboards here, another example, these boards were $89.99 when they came out, and I ordered a box. A full, I think a box has 10 boards. These boards are now nearly twice the cost, at least at Amazon. And I knew I was going to be using a lot of these boards based on the fact that I used so many of the H370s and I used a lot of the B460s. I don't see a B660 available that's not micro ATX. And like I said, for productivity reasons, the 12th gen would be a good choice if you're into production. The 12th gen is not a good choice if you're into most games. But you'll have to do the research, depending on what your needs are. But just getting the latest chip is not always the best or most applicable for your specific needs. I was trying to find the word, I can't find it. When you're gaming, most games are going to rely far more on your graphics card and your RAM and your input-output storage than they're going to do on the CPU. So the CPU is mostly for people who are creating content. There may be an exception here or there, but that's the general rule of thumb. All right, well, it's good to have my internet back. Let me just double check some settings here. Bruce Hilton contributed $2. He says, thanks again for your advice and builds. Right on, Bruce. Thank you. Planet Cryos with $2.99. He says, because why not? Thanks, Planet Cryos. And everybody earlier, thank you, Peter Laycock. Peter's been, he's been so beneficial to the amount of content I'm able to create. You guys will never know. You will never know how much Peter has done for this channel. But when you see him in the chat room, all you need to know is 50% or more of my content would not be available without the support of Peter Laycock and others like John Wilson here in the chat room and Ricky B and all the frequent contributors, Tony Wallow and I'm losing track of everything. Luke Greenia, Madi Yoel. It's these folks that enable me to make the content that some viewers complain about. You just can't convince everybody of what has value. But I thank all of you for your kindness. Paul O'Brien with €2 says, excellent live streams over the last few days. Yeah, thank you, Paul. I've got a lot of content to create. I have fallen way behind because of events beyond my control, and I'm doing my best to get caught up with my backlog. So there's probably going to be a lot more videos more frequently as we go into the month of March. And it's my goal to work as much as I can before the weather hits 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's going to be disparaging and difficult because the Studio B here doesn't really cool down very well, and then you get the noise from the air conditioner in the background. So I am highly motivated to really hunker down and get through this. There's a £1.79 from Stan Aristoff. He says, thank you, Kerry. Well, thank you, Stan. Stan's another frequent contributor here that, without which I wouldn't have had the funds to stock up on the boards or to stock up on the Corsair 200Rs or to stock up on the power supplies or to stock up on the RAM when it was on sale. So that's all thanks to you guys. And as a result of that, it enables me to have content, right? Okay, so here's our B560 HD3. I love this motherboard. There's no reason you can't put a K processor on it. Even the 11900K works beautifully in this. Absolutely beautifully. Just because it's a K processor doesn't mean you have to overclock it. K processors are already 10% faster out of the box stock. And sometimes people don't take into consideration that you can catch sales where an 11900K or any K could be on sale for the same price or less than the non-K version. But a lot of viewers make the assumption that money was wasted, and yet, that you put a K processor into a non-Z board, and they failed to grasp that they didn't ask me how much I paid, and they failed to grasp that the stability and reliability of going 10% faster stock is way better than any overclock and the time invested for that, in my opinion. You just don't need to overclock it. You're going to go 10% faster with a K series chip of the same model number. And if you can do that for a couple dollars more, I mean, people spend hundreds of dollars just to get a little tiny bit of performance difference. 10% is a significant performance increase. And you don't have to do anything. You just pop the chip in no differently. Also, the K processors do not come with coolers, but we don't want to use stock Intel coolers anyway unless we're on an i3 or maybe an i5. And even so, on a lot of the i5s, I still prefer the same old Mugen 5 processor because they're CPU cooler because they're not very cost prohibitive and they're very easy to install. G-Man Panthro with £1.79 says, good evening from New Mills, Ayrshire, Scotland. Not quite sure if I'm pronouncing. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing it right, but thank you, G-Man. And Andy Kane with €2 says, yet again, every little helps. Absolutely, every little bit. Listen, every bit. If everybody had contributed $1, I'd have $587 right now on this live stream. Not that you have to, but like I said, I don't have a Tesla yet, so the money's all going right back into the channel. We have a bunch of systems to give away to the vets, and we're going to do that later on. Ghost Shadow contributes $2. He says, here Coke is $8 for a 12-pack of cans. In Alaska, you're in Alaska, aren't you? I'm sure there's Coca-Cola 12-pack would probably cost a lot more if you had to drive down into Canada to get it, right? So, I mean, I don't know what the economics there, I don't know how far away you are, but I would imagine distribution costs are going to be higher to go into remote areas. Jerry Span contributes $1. Thank you, Jerry. Daco said, received stickers in the UK from you today, Kerry. Thank you. right on Daco. I don't send those out. That's done by my sister, so you can certainly thank her. I let her handle all of that stuff because I've got all this stuff. There's Rick Lakes with $2. Thank you, Rick. As always, good friend of the channel there. Rick Lakes is another one of those folks who contributes regularly, and that support, as I mentioned, it means a lot to me. And Stealth Mode with $2 says, here's a little something to help. All right, thank you, Stealth Mode. Let's get some work done. I am on a tight schedule today. I've got about 2 hours, and let's see how much we can do in those 2 hours. I'm going to start by prepping the motherboard. We're going to just pop the CPU in here real quick, as we would normally do. And you know what? Let me get camera 2 on for close-ups. So bear with me for a second. I'm going to turn on camera 2, and I'm going to put myself on camera 1 here in the corner, real small, so I can align camera 2 for any close-up shots here. Camera 2 is initializing. Well, camera 2 is not even plugged in, folks. There's a cable that I was tripping over right here. And since I haven't been using camera 2 lately, I had disconnected it so I wouldn't keep nearly tripping over it. Let's try that out. We're going to get a signal now. Hey, well, that's zoomed in, isn't it? Let's zoom this out a bit. Actually, right about there should be good, I think. I just need to move some things. Just turn this to the side. Okay, so here's our close-up of the motherboard. I'm going to go ahead and take the CPU out of the box. XRod666 contributes $10 and says, well, howdy. Howdy, XRod. Thank you so much. Matt Power says hello. Frank M says, no camera operator today. No, in fact, we're probably not going to see any camera operators here for a while. You know, the problem with the camera operators is it's an added expense. And I need to start cutting some expenses, and I need to buckle down focusing on these customer builds. Customers have to come first. And then when there's opportunity to have somebody operate the camera, I'll certainly embrace that when those opportunities occur. Okay, let's go ahead and put the CPU in here. We'll get that right over here. Green Dragon with a $5 contribution. And Stan Ristoff with £1.79 says, I feel good tonight, Carrie. Thank you. Awesome, Stan. And thank you. And Green Dragon Zero, thank you both. I need to get my glasses out so I can see the socket. Just lift this up and pop this in. There we go. Woo, that one really went for a ride, didn't it? Just set that here. I suppose I need to find a place for this stuff. These are the two M.2 screws that Gigabyte is not pre-installing on the board like they were. We'll set those aside for now. I guess, you know, we can go ahead and put the solid state drive in. This is what we're using. Oh, you can't see. Which way do I have to go? I'm going to need to turn the camera just a little tiny bit. I've got to move it to the left. Left. Oh, no, I need to move it to the right. We'll just back that off a little tiny bit. Okay, that's a little better. Planet Kraus with a $3 contribution. Joseph Zins with a $3 contribution. Joseph says, hey, Carrie, I love your content. Keep it up. Yes, sir. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you again, Planet Cryos. Where's my tab? There's the tape right there. I'm trying to figure out how you guys can see this. I'm running out of space already. All right, here we go. Take that off. Brand new Samsung 970 EVO. I'm sorry, 970 EVO Plus. I'm going to take the two M.2 screws out and I'm going to place them in the motherboard so they don't get lost. We obviously need one to hold the M.2 down here, but we're not putting an M.2 here, but Edgar might want to put an M.2 in the future. And these little tiny screws are so easily lost and can be quite difficult, and well, not difficult, but just a pain in the butt to locate them and order them and then have to wait for them. So let's go ahead and just put them in the board where they won't get lost. Like I said, we have to have one here regardless. And if Edgar ever wants to use this secondary M.2 location, I'm not going to make him have to find the screw. We'll just put the screw in there now, and then it'll just always be where it should be. And you don't have to go locating it. James Prezi with $2 says, I love the different camera angles. And Steve Warrington with $2. Thank you, James. Thank you, Steve. You guys rock. The directions are inside of this container for the SSD. I don't know why anybody would want them, but that's for the customer. If I was building this for me, I would just throw those out. Oh, I feel so much better not being on my phone's bandwidth. Because not because of its expense, but because of how unreliable it is. How inconsistent quality that it gives me drives me crazy. I've been spoiled, so going back to that is painful. All right, we're going to go ahead and prep the cooler, but we're not going to put the cooler on because this connector up here, the CPU connector, that it's really hard to reach when the cooler's on and we're in the Corsair 200R case. Other cases, it's not a problem, depending on the case, but since I know that well in advance, I also know that there's a standoff in here, or sorry, we have to put a plastic, I don't have to put a plastic standoff in this position here, but because I have those little plastic standoffs from the systems we built in the 90s, it's a good point to use it. But if you're building a similar system and you notice there's this mounting hole on this board that won't align with your case, I suggest you use all the mounting holes that you can, and then if you have a little plastic standoff just to support the board, use it. And if you don't, I wouldn't recommend you go buying them. You generally can't just buy one standoff. It wouldn't really make financial sense to do so if you could. There's our cooling fan. And this box is so heavy, it's tilting the whole box. This is the screwdriver and the mounting kit for the CPU cooler. And then here we have the cooler itself. The panel the sides open up if you see me in the top right corner. And then it should be able to just take that right out of there. Come on now. Don't be difficult. There it is. Okay, let's set that down right there. And then all this can go back in the box. Get back in your box. There you go. What was that? Something like that. And then there's our kit of parts. Parts is parts. Take everything out of here. We've got our scythe, magnetized long screwdriver. The rest of this box is empty. And so all of this big box, if you're looking in the upper right corner, this will all go in the recycle bin. It's just a bunch of cardboard. So we'll just put this right over there. Documentation, don't need that. Let's go through this little kit of parts here and pick out what we need and what we don't need. We have mounting for AMD or Intel. You use one or the other, so you are going to have spare parts. Sean McDermott with 10 pounds says, great channel, have some Cokes on me. Cheers, Sean, thank you, I think I will. All right, I still feel like I need to move this camera a little bit because as I'm spreading out other parts, we're going out of frame here. So just maybe that'll do. Okay, so where was I? This kit here, this bag, has the little plastic spacers we need along with the thumb screws that we need. So that can go, hold on, where am I? Right here. This little kit right here. We'll open this up and take out the parts that we need for the Intel build. So that means we need the 4 plastic spacers. 1, 2, 3, 4. We need the 4 thumb screws. 1, 2, 3, 4. Everything else that's in my hand here is for AMD or a Intel 20 series socket like 2066, 2011. So we're not doing any of that. We can put those back in the bag. Now for most people, they will never ever use these parts, so you could just choose to throw them in your recycle bin. In most cases, if somebody's going to switch from an Intel chip to an AMD chip, you would typically buy a new cooler. Most people don't reuse a cooler. But you may not be most people. Now we have the brackets, and for the brackets we need, you'll see there's these curved brackets here. Those are for AMD, so we will not use those. And then we have these straight brackets, and these are for Intel socket 1150, 1151, 1155, 1156, and 1200. One of the things I enjoy most about the way Scythe's coolers go on, or specifically the Mugen 5, is this rear bracket that already has the screws mounted. A lot of other third-party fan manufacturers and liquid cooler manufacturers make you assemble this, and you can get it upside down. You can have the screws in the wrong position. There's usually 3 different positions the screws can go in. It's more complicated than it needs to be because they're trying to have a universal one-size-fits-all, so it doesn't really fit any of them as well. So this is much better because it's specifically designed for the socket we're dealing with. And now if we were doing 12th gen, you can buy just this piece for 12th gen already pre-assembled for about $8 on Amazon from Scythe. Go ahead and slide this in here like so. Notice there's cutouts, notches. Doesn't matter if we turn this 180 degrees and put it in this way either. We just don't want to put it in this way. We don't want those notches facing towards the I/O shield. We want them vertical. And you'll see there's holes that also line up with, and by the way, if you get one side in before all the other sides, it'll get kind of stuck like it is right now. But there's there's 3 screws that hold the CPU socket onto the motherboard. And one is right here, and then there are 2 here. And the reason why there are 2 holes here and a notch here, so you can flip it around the other way. It's a very well thought out design. It doesn't make you conform to it. It's conforming to you, which is what a good engineering design does. Now we can turn that around, and I can slide these plastic spacers on with the rubber side down, and it's going to hold that back plate in for us. Oh, put that one on upside down, Carrie. You can definitely tell the way it fits because it just kind of slides in with no resistance when you put it in upside down. When you put it in with the rubber side down, it immediately has resistance, and that's what you want to feel for. These right here, these are the hangers that hold the fans on. They give you an extra set in case you want to put another fan on the other side of the cooler. I never do that. It's a complete waste of time and money and more cable management that doesn't really result in much of a cooling difference for most people, maybe 1 or 2 degrees Celsius. Again, we're not going to put the heatsink on top yet. I don't know why I'm grabbing it. What I want to grab are the brackets, and these go on over the direction of the lever of the CPU. So they go right over the top of it. And you can just verify that by looking at the cooler and visualizing the fan is going to go on one side of it, blowing air through it, and we don't want it mounted vertically. Although we could do that, it's not ideal. So I'll just set the brackets on top of here. And then we use these thumb screws, and we can tighten this down. And then all we have to do later on is just pop the heatsink on there. It'll be good to go. See how painless that is? Super easy, barely an inconvenience. I just want to make sure these are good and tight. Feels good. Feels good. I need 2 of these wire hangers. A 1 and a 2. It's all tangled up. All right, and then the other 2 we can just leave in the bag. And all of the rest of this stuff, apart from the thermal compound and the fan, all of this stuff is spare parts for other style of CPUs, particularly the Intel 20 series CPU socket and AMD's AM4 socket and a few others that the Mugen 5 is compatible with. So with that done, we can go ahead and mount the board, I guess, into the case. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the case. We'll set the thermal compound and the fan brackets aside for right now. And we're going to move this right along. I got to figure out where I'm going to put this. Let's go widescreen back here on camera 1, or full screen on camera 1. Well, that made it full screen for me, but not for you. You know what? Control F ought to do it. There we go. All right, let me move this board. I've obviously filled up my entire workbench here, so let me move this out of the way momentarily. And Oh, and I got Amazon here. Give me a minute here, guys. I'll be right back. Good old Amazon. More stuff. All right, let's get the case up here. Corsair 200R, love this case. The second case I like, if I wasn't able to get the 200R, is the Cougar MX410, where we still deal with no case windows, front port I/O at the top, and no glass panels and no RGB. George contributes 100 RON. I'm going to test me on this one. Romanian, is that Romanian? Now I have to Google it. I don't know what this country is. Looks like that's Romanian leu, which is 100 Romanian leus equals about $22.78. Thank you, George. He says, greetings from Romania. I love the channel and the passion you put on building computers. Keep it up with the awesome content. Well, thank you for your support. Thank you for your kind words. We'll make sure you're blue in here. Welcome to the Blue Mod crew, George. I suppose you can't see anything if I do it this way, can you? Let me step around. Very different working off camera than working on camera. And I think a lot of people who leave particularly nasty comments have never done it before. And so they have an oversimplification of what they think in their mind versus what the reality is. And it's nice when viewers appreciate the complexity of working on camera. Sometimes I have to work backwards. Sometimes you can go out of frame with the camera and not realize it, and so the things that you're showing details of or you think you aren't going out. And it just makes builds take a little bit longer. But that's okay. No, we're not in a race. Enjoy your build, slow down, enjoy your build, and don't worry about comparing yourself to others unless you just enjoy being disappointed. There's always going to be somebody faster, somebody smarter, somebody dumber, somebody taller, somebody shorter, somebody thinner, somebody fatter. It's just what you choose to see. So you can choose to see the positive or you can choose to see the negative. Either way, it's a choice. Hey, thank you, Claire, MMA 1984 with a £1 contribution. Shout out to Claire. Now, with the case opened up like this, we have all of the mounting hardware for the motherboard and any parts we're going to put in the case in this box right here. And the way we release it, see, now I wouldn't do it this way if I was working off camera. But anyway, we just pull this little lever back and the box will slide out, and that's all of our mounting hardware. We also need to get the I/O shield that has to go back here before we put the motherboard in. That I left in the motherboard box, which I set over here, so bear with me while I grab that. So a couple of things that, going back to Marvin from the system we were working on last night and the night before, is he gave me some hardware that he has that he doesn't have any use for, and he wants me to find people in the community with a preference to vets, but you don't have to be a veteran, who would benefit from having. Let me step over here and I'll show you what he's got here. These are sealed in a box. So I say these because I have two of them, slightly different designs. Marvin has said if you have any veterans or others in need He bought these a long time ago, a while back, maybe a year or so ago, and he no longer has any need for them. As you can see, they're sealed in the package. And so the cost of packing and shipping these is covered by your contributions here. Anything that you win, anytime that you win something on the channel, you're only able to win one thing one time. Because our community is so large, it would be unfair for somebody to win more than once while others win nothing. You still obviously have to be in the United States. As I mentioned, the import fees, the likelihood for damage and shipping. So leave a comment after the video. Leave a comment that you want to nominate yourself for one of these 10 terabyte backup drives. That's courtesy of Marvin. Claire MMA 1984 said, what is an upgrade path from a Ryzen 7 1700X? Well, that depends what motherboard do you have. And what do you use the computer for? Why do you want to upgrade it? Is it failing to do something for you? Is it too slow? Is it, sometimes upgrading the motherboard is what you need to do. Although 1700 is a pretty old processor. We built I think the first AMD Ryzen, or one of the first ones I built, was a 1700X for the streaming computer that we later upgraded to a 2700X, but that required as I recall, did we upgrade the motherboard? Sometimes it doesn't make sense to just replace a CPU without replacing the motherboard, because even if it works on an older board, the older board won't be able to fully be efficient and take advantage of the newer processor in some upgrade cases, depending on how extreme the difference is in the chip. So just because it will be compatible with the board doesn't mean it'll be optimal in the board. Generally speaking, doing a CPU upgrade is very, very unusual. People don't normally have that done. Normally they'll have a motherboard changed out with it. But again, it depends on what's your budget, what do you use the computer for, and what make and model of motherboard do you have. That will determine what your upgrade path is. Now, I can give you a shortcut, and that is to go to the motherboard manufacturer's website, look at the specifications of the board. Under the download section for the board, there should be a CPU compatibility list, and that will give you an up-to-date list of what CPUs that board is compatible with, so that you can make the decision yourself of whether or not an upgrade would be worthwhile for you. Because Ison said, yes, Carrie, Thready Revenge is the new brother. I'm not talking about Thready's Revenge. I was talking about the streamer, the original streamer that's in a Corsair 200R case, if you recall. Then we had Threadripper, which was in an NZXT 710, and then Thready's Revenge, which is in an Antec Torque, Torque case. When I stream from Studio A, I am using the original Threadripper because I was testing it with the new motherboard I put in for stability. And now the old streaming computer, that went to Mortant in the chat room. I don't know if Mortant is in there, but he got a little piece of the channel history. Carrie, your back plate is in upside down. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. The back plate is in right side up. Maybe you've got to turn your monitor around. No, that's the direction. The speaker holes here always go on the bottom unless you're using an inverted case. It sure would be nice if people would ask questions like, Carrie, is the I/O shield upside down? Rather than making a statement that's completely false through their own misinterpretation. So, again, if you have questions, feel free to ask those questions, but please do so before coming to false conclusions. We'll save each other a little time and embarrassment. Now, I'm going to grab a plastic standoff to put in this motherboard. got a little bag of them. This is totally optional, but it's a good excuse for me to get rid of these little plastic these nylon standoffs and keep them out of the landfill, and it doesn't hurt to use it. Like I said, I wouldn't recommend you go on Amazon and buy a box of them just because you only need one, because you really don't need it. Not a requirement. I just cut the little nub off of the end here. There it goes. And then it kind of gives me this flat plate. And that will go into the motherboard, one of these mounting holes here. It's the far one closest to the edge of the board, in the center row of mounting holes. Then we'll go ahead and bring this down flat, and we'll mount the motherboard in. And if the motherboard doesn't go in, that would mean that I had the I/O shield in upside down, but obviously I don't, as you will see. Just set this in like this. Make sure we don't have any grounding tabs sticking up. This I/O shield doesn't really have any that jut out. That's a nice change. And we align this. One of the things I love about this series of motherboards from Gigabyte are all the video output options we have. A lot of customers still have older monitors. So I love that we have a VGA, we have a DVI, we have HDMI, and I think we have a display. Yeah, we have one of every kind. One that is what you call variety right there. Plenty of USB ports and our built-in Ethernet controller there, keyboard and mouse, and of course 2 more USB 2.0s there. Now, looking through the box that was included with the case, I want to find the motherboard mounting screws, which are really small and they have a wide thread. There's 2 screws that look very similar. One is a fine threaded screw, which would be used for 2.5-inch solid state drives and optical drives, like DVD drives that would mount. And then we have the short coarse threaded screws. Each case manufacturer uses the specific screws for their standoffs that are required for the case. So on the Corsair 200R, we use these little coarse threaded screws. And if we were building in an NZXT case or another manufacturer's case, we would use whatever screws that case manufacturer required for the motherboard standoffs. I'm going to try and get this one in the upper corner. All too often I save that one for last. It's one of the most difficult ones to get to, or to get aligned rather. Ooh, I felt that just snap into position. That was good. Elko says you can still buy those plastic standoffs in bulk. Yeah, that's why I said it's really not worth it to buy 50 of them and then just to use one when you didn't even need it to begin with. I only use them because I have them. When I run out, if that day ever happens, I'm not going to buy any. Carrie, Sarge Tech wants to know, is the center pea-size dot method of applying thermal paste enough? I'm using Arctic Silver Phi and a non-liquid cooler, in our cooler. So most of the time, it really doesn't matter how you apply your thermal compound. So long as you put on enough and not too much, it's going to spread out. I prefer to spread it out, as you've seen me do, with a nitrile glove. That ensures I have complete and even coverage across the CPU. The issue I have with applying thermal compound with the squishing method is how can I tell if the whole CPU is covered without removing the heatsink to look? And if I've put too much on, it creates an oozy mess all the way around the CPU and even gets into the socket, as we witnessed on Marvin's computer build. There was something else I discovered about Marvin's computer build. And I'm going to show you now that you've brought it up. Because remember how messy, they way too much thermal compound on there. But let me show you something else. You know how they didn't put all the screws in all the fans? Well, you can imagine my surprise. Well, I didn't check this yesterday when I took this liquid cooler out. But look at this. See that fan? I didn't take any screws out. This is exactly how it came out. This one on the other, this one's secured tight. And one of the screws was down inside the case. I was hearing it rattle, and I meant to look for the rattle. And then while I was disassembling it, I pulled out this long, thin screw from the back of the case, and I didn't say anything about it because I wasn't quite sure if it fell from when I was working, but it had already been there. But that's how they built this. Yeah, just another thing to add to the list of what they did poorly. But thermal compound application processes are mostly overthought by enthusiasts and people who overthink little minutia details that ultimately don't really make any difference in the real world. And if it really concerns you, what I'd recommend you do is to apply the thermal compound any way you want to and run your tests on it and get your temps. Then remove the thermal compound and apply it in a different way and repeat this with as many creative ways as you can think of to apply thermal compound. And do you know what you're going to find? It doesn't matter. As long as there's enough and not too much thermal compound, how you apply it is irrelevant when it comes to the actual cooling performance of the thermal paste. In fact, I've got a video demonstrating this. I even have a video demonstrating running a CPU without a cooler at all. So please don't get wrapped up in cooling, thermal compound application. It's moot. You could be using that brain power for actually caring about stuff that matters. But I do appreciate your question. It's a very common question because many enthusiast content creators here on YouTube emphasize the pattern in which they apply it as though it was critical to the build. It really isn't. The reality is, until you test it with your own eyes, which is what I would recommend you do if you care about such minutia, it really doesn't matter what anybody tells you. Try it yourself. Bear in mind that when you run something like Prime 95, you'll rarely get the same exact temperatures twice at a 20-minute interval. If you run Prime 95 for 20 minutes, right, and then you write down your temperature, you need to do that 3 times so you get an average. Then take the heat sink off, take all the thermal compound off using isopropyl alcohol, and then run Prime 95 3 times again. You'll find your averages are exactly the same no matter what thermal compound you use, no matter how much you paid for it, and no matter how you applied it. If you do see any difference at all, it might be 1 to 3 degrees Celsius, but your room temperature is never quite the same over this course of time, and so that also means that there's a margin of error of probably that same difference that you're getting. Going back to, it doesn't matter. Because I have OCD and I like to make sure I have full and complete coverage because I'm the one warrantying the system, I use my method. Because I'm not warrantying your system, what method you use and what thermal compound you use, that makes no difference to me, but I will tell you that it also scientifically makes no difference with regards to cooling, or none that's worth the effort. The cheapest thermal compound works as well as the most expensive thermal compound within a 3-degree variance. Again, something you can easily test yourself if you don't believe me. I'm not in the business of selling thermal compound. I have no reason to lie to you. All right, let me get the front port umbilicals freed of their wire tie here. There's our motherboard mounted in the case. We're making good time so far. this out of my way. Paul says you haven't put any RAM in. That's correct, Paul. That's because I don't want it to get in the way of me putting the heatsink on. So basically, the idea here is to work as effectively as possible. I don't want to work harder than I have to. It doesn't benefit us to have the RAM in right now. And so what I want to do next is put the power supply in, and then go ahead and hook the two main power cables up to the board, followed by the front port umbilicals, and then the RAM, and then the heat sink, and then the RAM, and then we can power on, do our first self-test. So we're well on our way. Everything's going according to plan. It's not that putting the RAM in earlier would necessarily be harmful. What's the point? Let me get the switches and LEDs hooked up here right now. Let's see what we got here. Hard drive LEDs right here. Bottom row of pins. Positive to the left side. And then we should have a reset switch in here somewhere that goes right next to the next two pins. Right beside the hard drive LED, right there. And now we've got our power switch right here, like so. And power LED right here. Okay. And I'll just push these other cables out. So, hope you're able to see that. Next, we can we'll put the power supply in. Now, at this point, I can kind of glance out at the chat room while I'm doing this. This isn't a lot of focus to put a power supply in. So if you have any questions for me, if you've asked earlier, please ask again. I haven't seen them. If you're interested in whatever parts we're using, that was all explained earlier in the video. You can rewind this live video right now, and you can also look in the video notes to answer any parts related questions we're using in the build. Set that here. Oh, I need my razor blade. Paul says you used to put the RAM in before the heatsink with the Mugen. I did. I did do that because I would typically want to test fire the motherboard outside of the case, just for showing you guys. But I've done this so many times. I'm not going to, you'll often see me install Windows before I put the motherboard in, so I need a heatsink on it. But then because we're using a Corsair 200R, it really makes it difficult to get that top CPU connector on. If we were using a different case, I still might have put the RAM in, or I might not. We don't always do the same thing the same way, depending on which parts. Each system is generally a unique system, and so the processes that I use are based on, in this example, that I would have powered the board on outside of the case. But doing it this way would be a more proper way, because I don't recommend people power on motherboards outside of the case anyway. But I will do it for educational, instructional purposes. Or if I've got a diagnosis system, I might take the board out just to remove any sort of grounding opportunities that might be causing the problem. And sometimes pulling out the board exposes things that you wouldn't have known were hiding and lurking behind it. Randall Hill with $5 says, Uncle Kerry, did I lose something to lose my blue wrench? What happened, and normally I don't know what's going on, but what happened, Randall, is we were talking about toxic people, and you said that I was toxic to Mitch, and I didn't take kindly to those words. There was no just kidding, no winky face. It looked like you insulted me. And so at that point, you were banned from the channel for 24 hours. And then I went ahead and unbanned you. And in doing so, have not re-invoked your moderator status because I don't know what your intent was with the comment. But it was quite upsetting to me. You know, when I poke at Mitch, it's because I know him. And the issue that we have online is that you guys, many of you feel like you know me, but I don't know you, most of you. So when you want to joke around with somebody, you should probably make sure you're both comfortable enough with that, unless you weren't joking. So it was quite upsetting to think that somebody would say that I'm harmful to my friend. It just was in poor taste. But if Mitch would have said it, that would be different because Mitch and I have a relationship, right? Mitch and I have a friendship. We can joke with each other because we know each other. It's not one-sided. So it's hard to know online when somebody is joking. Unless they use a winky face or they say just kidding, it's not worth it, in my opinion, to risk your moderator status with a joke that could be misinterpreted as an attack or an insult. Darren Patterson says, do you like rum and Coke? Why would I ruin a perfectly good Coke with rum? No, I don't. Duncan, he said, it's hard to see sardonic and sarcastic comments in text. Well, that's what the emoticons are for, right? That's why you get the smiley face. They're showing emotion. There's no way to show emotion in text. So that's what happened. Just if you're unaware, I want you to know so you don't do it again, because you and I have never spoken on the phone, Randall. I don't know you. I know your face. I don't even know what you look like. I don't know anything about you. So for you to say something like that, again, was inappropriate. If you and I were friends in real life and we hung out together, that'd be a different story. I would know you. But because I don't know you, I don't know what your intent was. I'm just taking the screws out that are in the little plastic bag with the power supply. Sorry, that's happening behind the case. And then we'll get this power supply out of the box and get it mounted in here. There's our power cable and our power supply. And we'll set that in here. I can even use the scythe included screwdriver to tighten these screws down on the power supply. My electric driver set on a clutch setting of 3, which is great for putting in like the motherboard screws and most components, but the power supply really needs to be secured in because it's heavy. And we don't, it's got a fan in it. We don't want it to be loose and vibrate, and that'll make noise, the vibration. And then I'll take the power cable out of here. I'll put the power cable in the motherboard box so we know where that is. And we'll hook up the power cables to the motherboard. Then the heatsink goes on with the thermal paste, and then the RAM. And we can test fire it and get Windows installed. Overall, it's a pretty easy build. It's a great first time build if you've never built one before. It's pretty simple. And it'll be a very respectably, what's the word I want to use? Be respectable in power, in performance, and unmatched in reliability compared to any pre-built you'll buy. At least it will if you build your computer with pride and you take your time and you want to make sure it's doing right. Built right. A lot of these big manufacturers, you know, they just have an assembly line process, and the employees are, you know, maybe just putting hard drives in, or maybe they're just putting RAM in, and that's all they do in the assembly line. They don't really have a pride or a drive. Some of them might, but just generally speaking, they don't care. It just goes through the line. Let me get this power cable on here. There's the 24-pin power cable on. I still have, let's see, there's the audio cable. We can run that right in that little gap right there. And I'll grab my glasses and flashlight so I can see the little pin connector. And we'll plug on that front port audio cable. Here. Missing pin is in the down position. There it is. Then our USB 3 cable will go right up here. I suppose I can take care of that right now. How I want to route that? Guess I want to do it that way. Yeah, that's the way I want to do it. We'll bring this cable up into this top corner. This is where the heatsink would get in the way on the 200R using the Mugen 5 heatsink. Thinner heatsink would give us a little more room, like Noctua's got that thinner U12S, which I have come to dislike. But the heatsink on the Noctua U12S is narrower and gives us more room to get a hand up in here to get that connector. This fan cable can also get hooked up right now because the header for it is way up there. And so this is a good time to cable manage it before the heatsink's in the way. So let me grab a couple cable ties and we'll take care of that right now while we're in there. In fact, the case comes with a couple cable ties, and we'll just use the included. see, so that's going to go. Suppose, how are we going to do this? I guess pretty much the way it was wrapped, we'll just keep that the same since the cable's automatically remembering that position it was in. And then when we start the zip tie, we can refine it a bit. We'll refine the where the loops are for making it look a little cleaner. Here we go. And we can plug that in right up here on the top system fan header, right there. There we go. And so that way, we won't have to deal with that later when that big heatsink is right there. Just want to make sure I have that on correctly. It felt a little weird when I pushed it on. Yeah, that looks okay. All right, making progress. Got that USB 3 cable I still have to plug in. Pop that over here. And that's going to go. That's going to go on there. Okay. So the next thing I can do is apply the thermal compound and the heat sink. I'm going to lay the case flat to do this, so you're not going to get much of a view here, but I've certainly shown this close up a lot of times. So this is the same cooler with the same thermal compound application method that I'm going to be using. What I like to do is I put about, I have to eyeball it. I put about as much thermal compound as I think I need when I spread it thin. Better to put on too little and add more than to put on too much and have to clean up the mess of it. I use a nitrile glove, not a rubber glove, not a nylon glove or a latex glove. Those all can conduct electricity, static. And so nitrile, they don't have to be sterile, you just need them to be clean. Sometimes even just putting a piece of cellophane tape on your finger and using that to spread the thermal compound. Effectively, what I'm doing is finger painting with thermal compound and making sure that the entire surface of the CPU is evenly covered in thermal compound. And then I tap on it. I tap on the thermal compound. And the reason I do that is so when the heatsink goes on the thermal compound, there's still a squishing effect that prevents the, any sort of air bubbles, which really don't, they're microscopic, they don't really matter. But it solves the argument from the theoretical internet enthusiast community that are so loud. It doesn't hurt anything to do that. To tap on it and make those little hills and valleys and ridges. And then again, it also squishes the thermal compound the same way. But air bubbles in your thermal compound it's an internet made up thing. Whether the system here isn't airtight. Air can get into it. And when thermal compound heats up, it becomes quite viscous and it shifts and it moves, it's fluid. So air bubbles can be introduced to it, and air bubbles can escape from it. This isn't an aqua lung. This is just there to help transition the heat from the imperfections, the molecular imperfections of each surface. That's all it's doing. You'll notice there was some tape over this. Of course, that's there to keep this area polished and clean, free of any dust or fingerprints or oils from your skin. Not that that makes it not work, it just won't work as effectively. So here we're talking, again, maybe 1 to 3 degrees difference. So if you do touch it, you can still put it on. It's still going to work. It's just may decrease its efficiency a little teeny tiny amount. Or if you want that extra little bit, again, I'm a professional and I have to be held accountable for my systems. If I would have touched this, it's no big deal to get a Q-tip in some rubbing alcohol and just clean that up. Wait a second for the alcohol to evaporate. As good as new. Working with the case down like this is a lot easier because I don't have to try and hold the heatsink in position, and then I'm afraid the heatsink might, one side might tighten down more than another, and you won't be able to tell by looking at it, but it won't be making complete contact with the CPU. And I've demonstrated that with a customer's build. A customer came in here with a build and they were having heating issues, and when I took the all-in-one liquid cooler block off of the CPU, the thermal material underneath the block, only 1/3 of that material went onto the CPU. So clearly the block was not sitting flush against the CPU. And that's why they were having heating problems, overheating problems. And it's not something you could just look at and tell. It's something it was only exposed once the block was removed and we could see under it. There's $5 from Madi. Thanks, Madi. And Raj D with 10 pounds. Thank you, Raj. These heat sinks are in stock at Amazon, and the link for it is in the video notes. They run about, I think, $59.99 here at Amazon.com in the USA. Madi's contributed $2. Says, Carrie, what's wrong with your camera? I don't know what you're talking about, Madi. If you're seeing something that's unusual, it would be better for me if you would describe to me what you're seeing than asking me what's wrong. Nothing's wrong. So I don't know what that's in reference to, but thank you for your contribution. Just trying to get caught up with comments. Oh, my stomach's growling. He's trying to tell me something. I think I'm caught up here. Okay. I need to tighten the heatsink down. What did I do with that Mugen driver? Did I put it back in the drawer? Did I do that? Yes, I did. Oh, that side didn't even go in at all. I don't want to tighten this so far down. We're going to loosen this side back up a little bit. I can already see the heatsink tilting to one side. We want it to be applied evenly in order to have the best thermal transfer of heat. It has to sit completely flush. It's not just about thermal compound here. There it goes. Yeah, it took a while to get that lined up. Okay, that's good to go. Now I can pull this system back up on its feet, and you can see what it looks like with that nice black side, the Mugen 5 cooler installed. How am I doing on time? Still doing all right. Still doing okay. All right, we can put the fan on it. So I've got the fan here. And I probably want to go ahead and cable manage this fan right now before I install it, because it'll be very difficult to get to cable manage once the fan is put on. So back at the included cable ties, and I try to fold the cable nice. Like right now it's the way that is, I don't like that. We're going to put the heat, how are we going to do this? We're going to put this on. Say we put it on that way. Yeah, well, I see why they did that. I would prefer it went the other way around, like this. So then the cable's not interwoven, it just layers it just like that, nice and smooth. And then we can zip tie that into position. There's one, and I'll do another one just to keep it clean. Nice clean look here. Looking for my glasses. I need my glasses to find my glasses. There we go. And let me step over here. And let's get this fan put on. So the fan is going to go on like that. So that means we want one of these to go on here like this. And the same on the opposite side. There we go. Plug that into the CPU fan header, which is a different color than all the other fan headers. If you fail to do that, your system may not boot, and you may get a warning message that no CPU fan is detected, simply because you plugged it into the wrong fan header. And it's there to let you know if your fan should fail, because these systems run so quiet, how would you ever know? There's no case window to look in and see. And even if it had a case window, if you've positioned the computer, let me take this off. If you have positioned the computer against the wall where the window is, where the case window is, you won't be able to see inside of it anyway. There we go, there's one. There's the top one, and now, now I can put this cable. It's kind of fighting me a little bit there. I was way off, Carrie. Much better, much better. Now, we'll go ahead and open these RAM sockets up. We'll pop the RAM in and we can test fire this bad boy. Where's my RAM? There it is. This is that Crucial Ballistics gaming memory. It's not really gaming only memory, but this was on sale for $90. I made a video letting you guys know. Several of you took advantage of that offer. It sold out relatively quickly. And many of you have reached out to me and told me that you received it and thanked me for making you aware of the sale. I didn't make any money on that. I was just letting you guys know it was a good price. There we go. There's one stick of RAM. You'll see everything is black. Black cooler, black case, black fans, black RAM. That's it. Be ready to smoke test. Make sure the power supply power is in the off position. We'll hook up HDMI using the integrated graphics built into the 11600K. I need a keyboard and a mouse, which I have over here. There we go. We'll bring this over here. And I'm going to plug the wireless dongle here up on the front. This allows me to test those front port USBs, make sure that those are working. And then I should look for whatever the latest BIOS is, because I'm probably going to need a BIOS update on this motherboard. So let's do that now. I'll just go over to the streaming computer and we'll look up B560 HD3. And then we want to look for Gigabyte's website for this product under support, and then under BIOS shows there have been 7 total BIOSes released, with the latest coming out November 9th. That's BIOS version F10. So we're going to grab that. We're going to extract the zip file I just downloaded here on the streamer. I have to explain it to you because you can't see it. And then I'll grab my BIOS flash drive, which is just an empty 2 gig flash drive that I reserved for this purpose. And I'm going to copy just the biggest file that's in that zip file that ends with .f10. We just need that one file, and then we'll just paste it onto this flash drive. You'll see the lights blinking. And then we'll close that window and close that window. And then we can pull the flash drive like that. I'm going to set it down because I need to make sure the system boots first. That's my main concern at this point. And the solid state drive is new, so therefore it has no partition, no format, and obviously no operating system, because the solid state drive manufacturer doesn't know if you're using this in a tablet or a laptop or a MacBook or a Linux machine. It'll work in any of those, so they don't presume that. What is on the back of this board here? It's like a little piece of plastic for some reason. Static. It was being held on by static. I don't know where that came from, but get rid of that. And okay, I think we're ready to test fire. You guys ready? See if the smoke comes out. Flip the switch on. Let's go over to my OBS settings and we'll turn on HDMI input and put myself in a corner like that. Okay, here we go. Power light has come on. No CPU fan turning yet. I would think I would see that CPU fan turn. I wonder if I maybe didn't put the connector on properly. We're going to just let it sit for a minute. It's still powered up, even though it doesn't look like it is. Yeah, I have the CPU fan on incorrectly. So I've powered it off. We're going to move that over just one pin. I was one pin off. That could prevent it from booting. We'll turn it back on. Now the fan is spinning. Rear fan is spinning. Power light is on, so we know the power switch and power LED are hooked up correctly. And hopefully we'll get a power on self-test, a post screen. And this could take 60 to 90 seconds on a first boot as the BIOS trains the memory and CPU. So this requires a little bit of patience. There it is. So I'll hit the delete. Well, no, I didn't want to do that. Wrong keyboard. It took us into the BIOS anyway. We're a couple versions behind in the BIOS, as you can see here. I'm going to take off camera 1. Well, not yet. First of all, you can see I've got the flash drive. I'll plug it into any USB port in the back. Now I'm going to turn off camera 1 so you guys can see the entire BIOS. And I'm going to make it full screen so I can see the BIOS as good as you guys can. There it is. And you see it recognizes both sticks of the crucial RAM. It recognizes our CPU properly. So I'm going to hit F8 as we look down in the bottom right corner of the Q flash option right here. I can click it with the mouse or press the F8 button. And then update BIOS. And then there's the BIOS file I just downloaded and copied. Are you sure you want to update? I am sure. It's going to just make sure we have the right BIOS, verifies it. And it says, here's your current flash, which is F7 in its release date. And here's what you're updating. Notice I don't have to get F8 or F9. I can go right to F10 and press to start. And this is where you stay hands off and give it time. The best thing you can do is leave it alone. People often are impatient and they cause problems because the computer may need to reboot 2 or 3 times after or during the BIOS update process. And if you interrupt that, you could create a problem. So always be patient. If you don't have the patience and you don't trust yourself, don't do it. Let somebody else do it or just live without it. The easiest thing you can do is to leave it alone, and you'll likely have the best success if you follow that advice. Now, after a certain amount of time passes, if you want to, then have some anxiety after, a BIOS update like this should take about maybe 5-6 minutes at the most. So if you double that and you've waited 12 minutes, let's say, and you're still not getting any indication anything is happening, at that point, then something's wrong. Usually, if you're patient enough, things take care of, things will automatically come back. It's anxiety and perception. So we just sit here and wait for this to happen or to complete. Let me see what Amazon brought me. Speak of the devil. Remember I said I ordered that 11700K? That's what just came in today. So I'm going to put that over in this stack for Marvin. Perfect. Perfecto. Hey, Samuel Ramos is in the chat. Hey, Samuel. Good to see you, my friend. I guess I'm going to move some of these boxes out of the way here. Power supply box, we're done with that one too. See, I just keep myself busy so I'm not staring at the screen watching a BIOS update. It's pretty boring to watch. Looks like the system is currently rebooting. Just keep hands off. Hands off. You will know when it's done. Okay, that's all put away. Got my Gatorade. Again, patience is key here as we're waiting for the system to update. A lot of people think there's a serious problem, and of course, it's just a normal process of how BIOS updates are done. It's very common, and relax. Find a way to preoccupy yourself with something else if you have that kind of anxiety. This is all being recorded live. There are no edits. It's one take. So you're getting an idea of the actual amount of time it takes to do this. The system may reboot 2 or 3 times. And so what we're seeing is completely normal. Hey, Michael Dane is in the house. Katrina H. says, Carrie, love what you are doing and your broadcast. Keep it up. Sorry I haven't been here live much of late, but business does that to you. That's a best excuse. Work should always come first, but I'm glad you're here and glad you're joining us. Now, if we look at the BIOS information on the screen, we'll see that it's now F10. We've got our 32 gigs of RAM. We could probably turn XMP on, although I don't recommend you do that until you know for sure that, because if I go to install Windows now and it crashes, it's probably because of XMP. But I've had some pretty good luck with these are familiar parts. And we'll just hit F10 to save and exit. Oh no, I don't want to do that. I want to go to, I want to load optimized defaults. Anytime that we update a BIOS, it's always good to load the optimized defaults. And then what I want to do, we'll make sure XMP profile 1 stays on, and I want to turn the PTT off so that Windows 11 won't automatically install for this customer in the future. So what we do is we go under, I think it's under settings. Is it under miscellaneous or under, here's it IO ports. Yeah, it's got to be miscellaneous. Let's go back. Settings, miscellaneous. PTT, that's your TPM right there. See how it's been enabled? We'll disable that. And then it'll tell us that it's not Windows 11 compatible because we've done that. And that'll prevent Windows 10 from surprising the customer one day and being installed. And then all the customer will have to do if they want Windows 11 is to turn that back to enabled. Now, F10 to save and exit. And we're going to reboot. It should take us back into the BIOS with the saved settings. So I'm going to get my Windows 10 installation flash drive ready. If the system doesn't boot up correctly, it'll be because of an incompatibility on the XMP. It's generally not something I turn on in advance. It's putting the cart before the horse. We want to make sure everything's running correctly. But as I mentioned, I've built this particular configuration a number of times, so I know everything's compatible. I'm pretty confident turning that on. But just in case, if we see any blue screens or crashes, it'll be because of the XMP. All right, so with the flash drive plugged in, now the only thing this computer has to boot to is the flash drive. It's the only bootable device, so it will automatically do that on its own. I don't have to press any function keys or select any boot options here. Rob Gurley contributes $5. He says, always great to be with you and the chat. Thank you, Rob. Thanks for joining us today. All right, we'll go through this in the standard procedure by clicking Next, Install Now. We never enter a product code during the installation of Windows, so we click I do not have a product key. We want Windows 10 Pro. If you want to buy Windows 10 Pro from my seller, it's under $12 right now. It's like $11.38 using my link and my coupon code. You can only activate it once, and it will stay activated indefinitely unless you change out a significant amount of hardware or the motherboard. But a retail Windows 10 Pro will set you back about $160. If you are ever in a situation that you would have to reactivate for some reason, it'll cost you another few bucks to buy another license, and you're still well below the retail cost. You could do that about 13 or 14 times before you'd be equal at the expense of a Windows 10 Pro retail license. Generally speaking, you don't have to have a Microsoft account. Once we put an activation code on Windows 10 and we activate it, Microsoft will remember the hardware hash, or basically the unique hardware and serial numbers create a unique hash that's unlike any other. So what happens if we do, for any reason, a nuke and pave where we're going to wipe out and reinstall Windows 10 from scratch, as long as we use Windows 10 Pro, tell it we don't have a product key, and follow the same procedure you just saw me do, once Windows is installed, go to Windows Update and grab your first round of updates. That's when it's going to sense, oh, I remember this computer hardware hash. It's already been activated. It already remembered your key, and it automatically reactivates. You don't have to enter the key ever again. If you change your motherboard, all bets are off. The key is tied to the motherboard. And as I mentioned, those keys are OEM keys. They activate one time, and they stay activated until you make a significant hardware change. But for the price, you know, if you want to be able to reuse the same key over and over and deactivate it and reactivate it, then you want the retail key at $160. So all the links for buying the Windows 10 Pro, even Microsoft Office, all the same rules apply. It activates once, stays activated for life. No Microsoft account is needed. And their Windows 10 Pro is on sale this, I don't know how long, at least for a week, for $11.38. I do recommend you pay with PayPal. A lot of credit cards think it's suspicious that you're making an out-of-the-country purchase. Unless you live in Hong Kong, making a purchase in Hong Kong is seen as potential fraud from your credit card company if you've never purchased anything from Hong Kong before. You won't have that issue if you use PayPal. All right, we go through all this the same way. We'll skip that. I'll say I don't have internet because it'll force me to create a Microsoft account if I plug it in right now. So they call it a limited setup when it's really just an offline account. This is going to a gentleman named Edgar. And we'll hit next, no password. And you know, I like to turn most of this stuff off. Don't want Cortana activated. There we go. Thomas Yeager contributes $10. He says, I love your channel. Do you build Linux machines? I do not build Linux machines because as a business owner, there's no money in it. And finding that work is very hard to find. Most people who use a free operating system aren't going to pay somebody to service it. So, and those who do pay, it's harder to find that work because there are fewer opportunities for that work. So there's enough Linux enthusiasts on the internet. I don't need to add to the fray. And as a businessman, servicing Linux is going to be a very difficult business to sustain unless you already have a client that's, for example, let's say I worked for a customer and the customer said, hey, would you be interested in servicing our Linux machines? It might be a reason to do that with a built-in client, you know, one that I don't have to go hunting for. But you better hope you have more than one. So things like Apple products, there's just not enough Apple users. Finding the work is hard, or harder than the Windows world. There's so many businesses and individuals running Windows that if you want to be in business and earn a living being a technician, you want to go with whatever has the most opportunity for work. But thank you for your contribution there, Thomas, and thank you for your question. I do have videos. If you type in, for example, on YouTube search, Kerry Holzman as one word, space, Linux. This subject matter has been covered multiple times over the last 14 years that I've been doing this here on YouTube. Okay, so now that we have Windows 10 installed, I'm going to go ahead and pull the flash drive. And I can now plug in the network, and we can go to Windows Updates. Of course, I will activate this computer a bit later. Save activation for the very end, because if things start blue screening and there's problems and you've already activated it, there may be an issue with reactivating again. Windows is in trial mode for like, I don't know, is it 2 weeks, 30 days, something like that. And even after that point, if you haven't activated, it'll simply just have a watermark that says, you know, your Windows isn't activated, and some features and customization won't be available to you, but it'll still run. You can still run your applications and stuff. It's just going to annoy you with text that won't go away. So we're in no hurry. Like I said, we've got at least 2 weeks anyway, and we will save activating as the very last thing. The one thing that we remain after activating would then be the cable management and repackaging the computer and getting it shipped. Wayne contributes $10. He says, do you run Malwarebytes with Windows Defender? Yes. Yes, I do. A paid version of Malwarebytes, not the free version. That's what all of my business clients that I maintain, that's the configuration they have. We haven't had a virus issue in over 2 years. Here's $50, comes in from Samuel Ramos. He says, it's nice seeing you again, Carrie and chat. It's been a while since I've been in the live stream, and I miss you guys. Well, we're glad you're back. Samuel, we missed you too, man. Thank you for your generous contribution and your continual support of the channel and community, my friend. This system is so quiet. I'm like, is this thing on? But I can kind of see the light on the motherboard. It's got like an amber colored light along the side, and I can see it shining through the PCI slot covers. So I know it's running, and I can see the screen but it's just dead silent, even though the fans are turning. While we're waiting for this, if you have any questions for me, this would be a good time to ask, since this is kind of like watching paint dry here, and I'll do my best to provide answers to your questions. And then I'm going to wrap up here around 4:30. I'm going to have to end the show. Maybe a little before that. And Madi says, not only is it quiet, it's fast. It's the 11600 Madi, so it's a little bit slower than the 11900K. This is the 11600K. But it's also a lot cheaper, and it doesn't run as hot. Now that's probably a video driver that's loading. That's why the screen blanked out. All the text got really tiny. It just went into 4K resolution with that video driver. Super tiny. Richard says, I love your content, Carrie, but I don't have any money to donate. Well, that's fine, Richard. It's not required. Never expected, always appreciated. We're glad to have you here. What we do require is people to just be kind and that's another way of showing support. It's just being kind. Be kind to people in the chat room, in the community, and don't overstep boundaries. Everything's fine. No payment is required. Just like you being here. Like I said, I have a couple more of this motherboard CPU combo. If you guys are interested, you can reach out to me at my email address. This is for serious business inquiries. I don't answer technical support questions to strangers on the internet. Otherwise, I would never sleep, and I would never get any work, and I wouldn't make any money, and I'd lose the house, and I'd lose everything, and I'd be living out in the street. And those people I helped that led me into the street most likely would not help me in return. So business is business. I got to take care of the paying customers. And if you're sincere about wanting to buy a system, you live within the United States, hit me up. We'll talk about what your needs are, what your budget is, and see if I can't help you out. And the email address, let's see if I can put my email address on the screen since we're kind of just sitting here waiting. Let's see, OBS, let's add a text window. Marty Yoel contributes $20. He says, it's for both of us. Thank you, Marty. Let's see. Wow, that's big. Let's get that a little smaller over here. People who send technical support questions to this email address who are not my customer, those emails will be deleted. When the channel was smaller, I certainly had more time for that. The downside of getting more popular is then, people have never seen me before don't realize, but what they're doing is they're trying to get me to work for them for free. And I don't mind help. I'd love to help people, but it's not fair where people are paying for help to push them aside for somebody who isn't. So that's for sincere business inquiries, that email address, and anything other than that will just be erased. So set your expectations accordingly. Just being straight up with you guys. Let me just check the old phone here and see if I missed anything. Got a viewer that's local here. He says his name is John Blackley, and he has a YouTube channel here under his name you can check out. He says, I talked to you last week when you were so kind to actually phone me. I love the video you did for Marvin's computer. What a great hero Marvin is. You may need some music while you pound away on these jealous PCs. I have 15 great videos on my YouTube site and just put up 2 for St. Patrick's Day. If you go to YouTube and search for the name John space Blackley, just like it sounds, there's like a white circle. That's his avatar. You can click on it. And his videos aren't on computers. John is 84 years old, and he says, I hope I can shake your hand one day. He also says, I loved your stories about your mom. I bet she had a heart of gold. She's a tough lady. Tough but fair. No truer words could have ever been spoken. I was reading about this new router. I think I'm going to get one to check it out. When we talk about antenna placement on the routers, TP-Link has a router that the antennas automatically move independently. It's got 4 antennas, 1 on each corner of the router, and the antennas move to whatever they're connected to. Like if you're walking around with your smartphone around the house, the antennas move to establish the best signal with that connected device. Is it a gimmick? Does it actually work better? I don't know, but it sounds really cool. Let me see if I can find it on Amazon. I can't remember the model. I just know it's a high-end, sort of a latest model TP link. It's a real funky looking router. I read about it in this month's edition of Maximum PC Magazine, which I have back here. I need to look up the name of the router. I just know who it's made by. Don't know the model name. It's in here somewhere. There it is. It's the Archer AXE 200 Omni. All right, let's take a look. Archer AXE 200 Omni. Guess it's not available for sale yet, at least not on Amazon. Let me do a Google search for that and hit the shopping tab and see if it's available anywhere. TP-Link's website shows it. See if I can share the screen with you here. There it is. Mechanically rotating antennas. Robotic antennas auto-adapt their orientation for best signals. How much is it? Best of CES 2022. Wi-Fi 6E. Freaky. That is weird. How much is it? Shut up and take my money. I have no idea. What's hot deals? What's this? Squirrel. 12% off. That's it? You're making a big deal about 12%? Hey, $13 for a USB gigabit Ethernet adapter is a pretty good deal. Well, okay. Featured deals and hot deals. Interesting. All right, anyway, before that squirrel, I was looking at AXE 200 Omni. Let me just double check where we're at on the computer updates here. Restart. All right. Let's hit the shopping tab and see if it comes up anywhere. Huh. I don't see it available for sale. Smart home businesses, deals, where to buy. Official store, best deals, top sellers, new arrivals. Those new arrivals are pretty old. Wonder when that router is supposed to, it obviously must not be out yet. I mean, the site is advertising it like it's out, but I don't see any link to buy it. Where to buy, official store, online stores, distribution partners. B&H Photo, maybe? No, B&H Photo doesn't have it. Well, I guess I'm just a little ahead of my time on this one. I might have to get one of those in to review it, though. I'm just curious if that actually will give you better Wi-Fi around their house, or if it's just gimmicky. And furthermore, if it's reliable, that the motors, how long will the motors last that are turning those antennas if they're constantly in motion? If you're moving around a lot, I wonder what the longevity is of that. Michael Dane says it's going to be out in the second quarter of 2022. Aren't we in the second quarter? Well, I guess not the second financial quarter. Okay, so that would put it in the April through end of June. Thank you, Michael. All right, can I take this resolution down a step here? Let's go like 1920 by 1080. Much better. Keep changes. And we'll go back over to Windows Update again. Download, install. Let's view optional updates, and we'll grab those. Those are going to be drivers. Another Intel display driver. Great. All right, we'll let those download, and then we're back over at the chat room. Again, any questions? We're going to wrap this up here probably in the next 15 or 20 minutes. I'm not going to run Prime 95 on it. The clock is ticking, and as I mentioned, I have an appointment, so we'll be wrapping it up a little early today. Chris Garrett wants to know, what if you connected more than one device? Well, it's the antennas, all four antennas operate independently, I guess. So each antenna can, I guess you could optimize 4 different things at the same time. I'm guessing. Marty says his birthday's coming up on March 7th. Got a couple weeks, Marty. Don't rush it. Michael Dane wants to know, what's plans for next Friday? What surprise do you have for us? I don't know yet. Sometimes I don't know what's going to happen on Friday until Thursday night. So we'll see how much work I get done this week, and we'll see what, if any, new work comes in this week. And then that'll determine what happens on Friday. That's the great thing about being self-employed and being a small business, is I can turn on a dime and I can shift and pivot almost instantaneously. Where bigger corporations, bigger companies, too many people involved, too much communication required, there got to be meetings and all that stuff. So. But there will be a show Friday at 1 o'clock, as always. Paul Latour contributes $49.99. Hey, Paul, thank you so much for your support, my friend. And let's make sure, is Paul a moderator? Well, you are now. Welcome to the Blue Mod crew, Paul. Thank you for your generosity. William Dawson says that router is going to be priced at $499.99. TP-Link usually is a budget-conscious manufacturer, so I would be surprised if after the first month or 8 weeks that it's out, that the price doesn't drop by $50. Kaizen-san wants to know, what's my thoughts on using a travel router when you're on the road with family and multiple devices? Yeah, they're great, especially if it's like a mobile device that's a router built into it. They have like those, what are they called now? It's like a little mobile hotspot that you can take with you. Those are wonderful. If you are wanting to use just a router itself without the built-in like cellular-based internet access, and you want to be able to connect to a hotel or some public Wi-Fi, that's really up to you as to whether or not it's worth the trouble. But with those mobile hotspots, those things are amazing, and I highly recommend them if you travel a lot. When you're using somebody else's internet, even if it comes with the hotel room, you don't know who's eavesdropping, and you don't necessarily have a guaranteed quality connection. If there are other people staying in the hotel that are using the internet heavily, it's going to affect your speed. So if you're going to bring your own internet, like with a mobile hotspot, you'll have a consistency of quality as well as a security. I wouldn't recommend you do any financial transactions or anything private on a Wi-Fi you do not own. There's just way too many scammers out there, and you'll never know what's happening. You'll never know until your credit's affected by it in the case of an identity theft, or your accounts are taken over in the case of a man-in-the-middle attack. You would never know it until after it's already done. So if you're concerned about security and you want that quality of service, guaranteed service, bring your own hotspot. And they can usually connect up to 5 devices wirelessly on many of them. And you can pick them up from whoever your cell provider is. All cellular providers, as far as I know, offer them. How much money is worth paying for said travel router? Louise wants to know. It varies depending on the bells, whistles, and features of the travel router. They're all going to be pretty much locked in for the specific model, and then probably comparable on what the airtime costs. But something you need to call around or check with your service provider, your cellular service provider, and see what options they have. You can usually go to their website and then just look at how much hotspots are. And then they'll have multiple hotspots available for sale that have different features and then are priced accordingly. And then, of course, the actual bandwidth that you use on the hotspot, the prices can vary based on who your provider is. So there's no generic number I can give you. PDK Gamers contributes $9.99. He says, I couldn't have said it any better myself when I was connected to a hotel Wi-Fi about 2 weeks ago and my identity was stolen and my bank account was cleaned out. Yeah, nobody thinks it's going to happen to them. They're like, I'm only going to be on for a second, or this is fine. It's like walking out in... I'm trying to think of a good analogy. It's like walking across a busy freeway, saying, cars aren't going to hit me. Unfortunately, we can't control things with our mind. So just talking yourself into something that's not reality-based is a risk you're taking that I cannot condone. And then it's just a matter of time. You might get away with it a couple times. But eventually, it ain't gonna work. All right, this is waiting to restart. Or is it, looks like it's downloading something here. Yeah, we'll just go ahead and restart it. Adam Sleep with a $10 Australian contribution says, Squirrel thanks you. Yes, I have been diagnosed by a psychiatrist and it's all okay. Yeah, but who's diagnosing the psychiatrist? Yesterday's Tomatoes wants to know, will Windows 11 be available to install on a 2028 year build by 2025? Will you be alive? I don't have a... Hold on. I know how to answer this question. I have just the thing. Let's post your futuristic time traveling question to the Magic 8 Ball. Will Windows 11 be available to install on an 8-year build built in 2020? 5 years from now. Or, I'm sorry, not 5 years, 3 years from now in 2025? Magic 8 Ball is correct. It says ask again later. If you'd like to ask me that question in 2025, I could provide an answer to you. For all we know, Windows 12 will be out. Okay, let me go back to my Windows updates. Interesting, it's telling me the PC can run Windows 11 when I turned off the PTT. I wonder if it came back on again. It should tell me Windows 11 can't be installed on this PC. I have to go back in the BIOS and double check that setting. Andy wants to know, is the longest part of the build the Windows updates? No, not necessarily. It depends on the build. You know, the Big Beast build was far longer to build than any of the Windows updates. And when Microsoft comes out with the next version of Windows 10, like we're on 21H2, as soon as we install 21H2, all those previous updates are already put in the new Microsoft build. So initially, when the operating system comes out with that new installation, that new version, there's barely any updates to do. But then as time goes by and they're patching security risks and things like that, patching bugs, exploits, at that point then the updates start building up, and then suddenly you have a bunch of updates you have to do, and then before you know it, 22H1 will come out. And then it has all those previous updates, and then your updates only take a minute or two. And then the whole wheel repeats itself. As it has since, about Windows XP is when all this started. And it's always been the same. It's never changed. You'd have a bunch of updates in Windows XP, and then Service Pack 1 would come out. And Service Pack 1 contained all the previous updates, so you didn't have to do those anymore. But then more and more updates came out, and now you're installing Service Pack 1 a year later, and you've got a year's worth of updates. And then Service Pack 2 comes out, and it's got all the updates from the previous year, as well as all the years prior. And then you don't really have any updates to do. And then it gets built up again, and about a year later, Service Pack 3 comes out. Well, Microsoft doesn't call it Service Packs anymore. Now they're calling it a build, build 21H1, 21H2. So I suppose 22H1 will be next, and probably in the spring. Ross wants to know, where do you get the Windows ISO file that you have on the USB drive that you just used? Go to Google and type download Windows 10. And the very first link that appears is from Microsoft. And you'll click that and follow the on-screen steps. You could also type into the YouTube search, Kerry Holzman is one word, space, Windows 10 download, and there's a how-to video I posted about 2 or 3 years ago that walks you through the process. Oh, now I can restart. All right, any final questions? We're going to wrap it up for today. I'm going to do some cable management later tonight on this bad boy, as well as go ahead and put an activation on it. I need to put on the Samsung NVMe driver, Samsung Magician software, the VLC media player, go through the apps in the control panel, remove all the unwanted bloatware, and run Uncle Kerry's Windows 10 optimizer, all the standard stuff you see me do a million times before. It's all boilerplate routine from this point forward. And yeah, if you want to buy a machine like this from me, or even something different to suit your needs, reach out with the email address I posted earlier and let me know your budget and your needs, and we'll see if we can't help each other out. And you must live in the United States. We have, back in 2013, I built my very first Intel NUC, NUC, Next Unit of Computing, and the video's still up here. And I've been reviewing it. Well, I intended to review it every year, just a follow-up review. And there's people who don't embrace the current present that we live in, and who still hold on to old ideas. Want to make sure everybody knows that they themselves have let the technology pass them by when they think that modern computers go obsolete in 4 years. That is a statement made by those ignorant of the status of technology today, or those who are so diva-esque and have a bottomless wallet, and they always have to have the best all the time. But don't let those people alter what is reality, and that is computers we build today, they last far longer than the computers we built in the 90s. You know, we went from 286 to 386 to 486 to Pentium. You know what I'm saying? And that the technology would go obsolete really quickly. Right now, humans with that attitude are going obsolete because the technology has been so far advanced, more so than any of the hardware or software. The technology itself, when we talk about the CPU processing power, it's way more powerful than what 90% of users need. And so for that reason, the things we build today will last far longer. So the reason I brought up the NUC is that's an i3 Intel NUC I built in 2013. So basic math will tell you that was 9 years ago. It'll be 9 years in April. And it's still being used every day for work. There's nothing obsolete about it. It's doing everything the same way it did it back in 2013. It's never needed a repair. And the most recent NUC I built was intended to replace the other NUC, not because it's obsolete or anything's wrong with it. It just felt like it's time. And the owner of that computer doesn't want to go through the hassle of reinstalling all their software, and they don't have any complaints. It's not running slow. It still boots in like 12 seconds. So they said they appreciate the gesture, but for now, they're sticking with that i3 Core i3 NUC from 2013, and they're very happy with it. So there's not a time. It's not like a bunch of bananas that expire on a certain date. There's just people who are very difficult to please. There are people who are very demanding, and those people must have more money than most of us, because if you don't have any money and you're being demanding, good luck. You know, beggars can't be choosers. And if you're starving and you're a picky eater and food is being offered to you that you don't like, it's your choice if you want to starve. But yeah, that's a very old school mentality about computers going obsolete in, you know, a couple years. That hasn't been the case now for more than a decade. And of course, if you're buying a higher end computer today, it'll last even longer. So that Core i3 was one of the lowest end Intel chips you could buy at that time, and yet it's still running great 9 years later. And you know, there's a difference between professionals and hobbyists when it comes to comments like that I see in the chat room from time to time, where people are just living in their own reality, in their own world, with no consideration for the way the majority of the population uses their computers and what would really technically define obsolete. So one person's trash is another person's treasure, depending on your value system and your financial situation. Ultraviolet says, my old Pentium 4 Dell machines ran just fine when I pulled them offline. They were durable, but they were obsolete. Well, sure, Pentium 4, but Now you're talking about a machine that's 25 years old. 25 years is a far cry from 4 years. Ask any 4-year-old. Katrina H. says, Carrie, I just wanted to say my husband is a veteran, and I surely appreciate your attitude and what you do for the veterans. Well, it's a community effort. It's not just me. Of course, we appreciate the service of all veterans, and we try and help out those veterans as much as we can, and to prioritize helping them over everybody else because of the sacrifice they've made for the country. Are we waiting on a restart again? I gotta make my screen bigger. There it is. Sorry guys, I just saw that just now. All right, I think that's gonna wrap it up for me for today. Thanks you guys for hanging out. Appreciate our collaboration. And thank you for all the contributions and all your kindness from those in the chat room. PDK Gamers contributed $4.99. Is my cell phone hotspot more secure than hotel Wi-Fi? Yes, because it's yours. Hotel Wi-Fi doesn't belong to you. And presumably you are controlling who can connect to your cell phone hotspot. You can't control who connects to the hotel Wi-Fi. You can't control if there's somebody eavesdropping on all your traffic, but you can control it if it's on your phone. Yeah, it is far more secure. Adam Sleuth and Paul Latour and Madi Yoel, Samuel Ramos, Wayne Was, Thomas Yeager, Rob Gurley, Sarge Tech, and Raj D. Randall Hill and Claire MMA, George, Sean McDermott, Steve Warrington, James Prezi, Planet Cryos, Joseph Zins, Stan Aristoff, Green Dragon Zero, X-Rod 666, Stealth Mode and Rick Lakes, Jerry Span and Ghost Shadow, Andy Kane and G-Man Panthro, Where One, Stan Aristoff, Paul O'Brien, Peter Laycock, John Jack Wilson, and Ricky B. Thank you guys so much for supporting our channel, supporting our community, and for just being amazing. And all of you, thank you so much, all of my friends in blue and those who are going to be turning blue in the future, for showing their kindness, proving their worthiness as a kind and considerate human. I look forward to having you joining our little club here, the like-minded individuals who enjoy lifting each other up instead of tearing each other down. Love that we've created this very exclusive community here of like-minded individuals from all over the world. It's very rewarding to me to have such kindness shared by strangers. And we will be back, I will be back maybe Sunday, if, I'm not sure yet. But certainly on, let's see, Monday I've got appointments, Tuesday I've got appointments, Wednesday I have appointments. So there might be some late night shows, if there's going to be shows on those days for that reason. Thursday should be a live show. Friday, of course, will always be a live show. And then that's going to wrap up next week. And then after that, the following week, we should have Mitch's birthday, Madi's birthday. We'll celebrate their birthdays and continue on with more builds. And hopefully we'll have a computer to Marvin by the end of next week, I hope. And then Marvin has given me a bunch of other older hardware that he doesn't want. And I'll go through that and we'll figure out what we're going to do with it. You can help me with that. Thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you very, very soon. Until then, bye for now.